Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I am really honored that you chose to come back and listen to what I have to say. I think my little sisters are super tired of me shoving my opinions about what they should be doing with their money down your throats. So, again, I'm thrilled that you are interested in what I have to say. As I mentioned in the last video, I am hoping that, by talking about these things on this channel, I can save some of you the stress that I've gone through because of mistakes I made, because of things I didn't know when I was starting out, when I was in college, when I got my first job, and things like that. And hopefully, just enable some people to have a smoother path to financial independence. Today, I figured that we would start out by talking about simple, practical things that you can use to get to your financial goals. As I mentioned in the last video, one of my biggest goals is to ultimately reach financial independence. We are way off from that as a family, but along the way, we have had to set, small milestones so that we can track our progress. And there are three tools that we have found that have been super critically helpful to reaching those goals and ultimately really to getting to them faster than we even plan. Right. There are three simple things. The first of which is have a budget. The second has been to live beneath our means. And finally, to save and invest. With regard to having a budget, it's really as simple as it sounds, right? But it's something that can easily slip away from you if you're not being super intentional and paying attention to where your money is going. I want to point out that a lot of the time, some of us feel that we don't make enough money to have a budget, or others of us feel that we make too much money and we don't really need a budget because we can afford to do all the things that we want to do. But that's a really slippery slope. And when you start thinking like that, you're really kind of setting yourself up for failure. Your budget is going to look different things that depending on what stage of life you're at. The budget I had when I was a graduate student making $1,500 a month is completely different than the budget I have right now. Again, your budget is going to depend a lot on where you are in life. But I think having a budget really frees you up and allows you to know exactly where your money is going and essentially tell your money where to go, rather than sitting there and every month you get a paycheck and then before you realize it, the money is done, but you don't know at all what happened to the money. So again, number one is have a budget. The second point is live beneath your means. Now, this might be the hardest one to do, right? Because there's so many things that we all want. There's so many things that we all need. And all of us work super hard and deserve everything that we want to get for ourselves when we ultimately get to a position where we're making money. But the truth of the matter is it's simple math. If you spend everything that you make, you have nothing left to save, you have nothing left to invest, and ultimately you're going to have to keep working forever to just meet your basic needs and to meet your wants. Again, if you spend everything you have nothing left to keep. So it's really, really important that we all make decisions that allow us to live beneath our means. And what does this mean practically? I think for most of us, if not all of us, the two biggest line items are our accommodation costs and our transportation costs. Basically, your house or apartment and your car. For a lot of us young people, we've been in school for a while. And during that period, you're basically living hand to mouth. You're either, walking everywhere or catching the bus, or you have a really tattered car that is just you have to pray for it to start. Every time that you get into it, you don't know how many times you've had it break down. And so by the time you're done with school, you're ready. You're ready to move up, upgrade, just save yourself the trouble. But you have to be really careful about the decision that you make for your car. Because if you go out and you get a car whose car payment is $500 every month, what are the other things that you could be doing with that $500 that having that car prevents you from doing? See what I'm saying? So if you had a car that was cheaper, you ultimately would have lower insurance and it would also be lower to maintain. So ultimately, you'd be saving yourself a lot more money than if you went out and got a really expensive car. Because guess what? If you have a car whose car note is $500, you likely need another 300 for insurance. And then maybe you're saving an additional 200 for maintenance, because maintenance on expensive cars is more expensive. You find yourself spending or saving about $1,000 assigned to your car alone every month. Now that's money that you're unable to spend on other things, or you're unable to invest in your future, which when you really think about it, is a car, which is a depreciating asset, something that you should be dumping all that money into. Ultimately, it really helps me personally to think about opportunity cost. Like, if I'm spending this money on this, what are other things that I could have been spending it on that I'm not able to because I've dumped it into this car. Another thing is accommodation, right? You get out, you find a really nice apartment and you move into, and yes, you can afford it, but what percentage of your income is your accommodation? And again, what does living in that apartment stop you from doing that you could have been doing? Now, for those of us who are older or more experienced and are at the stage where we're buying a house, how many of us really sit down and think about what value that house is going to have to us a year from now, right? When we were shopping for a house, we walked around, we saw some really nice places and they were really fancy, but it occurred to me that a year from now we'd be living in this really nice house, but we would be so used to it that it would have lost its novelty. Maybe my daughter would have drawn on the walls and the house would look tattered, and it would be home, so it would not look so amazing and so abstract anymore, because it would just be ours. We would be familiar with it. Familiarity breeds contempt. It would be home. But guess what? Although the novelty would have worn out, the house payment would stay, right? So when you're picking out a place to live at, know that you're going into a long-term contract, and be very intentional about what you should spend on your housing. Now, if anybody needs a rule of thumb, I like to think of 25% of your take-home pay as a good place to start. For some people, that's not a lot of money. And again, everybody is going to pick what works for their personal situation. That's why this is called personal finance. But if you're a professional and you make a good income and you have a really nice salary, it doesn't make sense for you to be spending tons of money on the place that you live, because again, that's money that you can spend on other things. There are other little things that you can take into account that would help you save money, or that would help you live beneath your means. Things like not eating out every day, things like looking for cheaper alternatives to things that you do frequently. A good example that people use is Starbucks. And if you drink Starbucks every day, you end up spending a couple $100 a year on coffee. But again, I think that, the bigger items, things to consider are your accommodation and your transportation costs. So figure out ways to minimize those. Those are set in place, and you don't have to think about it every time. Like, if you have to tell yourself every day, don't buy Starbucks, don't buy Starbucks, that's work that you have to do and a battle that you have to fight each time. But if you already go and pick a house that you can pay for easily, then you've already passed the first step, right? That's not something that you have to keep choosing to do. That's something that already sets you up for maximizing your savings and maximizing your investments. And again, which will allow you to grow your wealth and to reach your financial goals faster. So first, have a budget. Secondly, live beneath your means. And then the third thing that I think is really critical is to save and invest. So if you're making a certain amount of money, you have a budget and you're really telling your money where to go, and then you're living beneath your means and you have this other money left over, guess what? Save it. Save, and then invest it. I think that some of us are really good about saving money, but for us, especially Black people, we have we're very reticent about putting money into mutual funds and index funds. I was reading something today that said 40% of Black people in America participate in the stock market, essentially. And this is, a way to really grow your wealth passively without too much effort, that we're just not participating in. right? Those of you who follow the market know that it's had a long run of just growing for the last basically 12 years since the recession ended. And ultimately, it's had some hiccups recently with the coronavirus, but even now it's picking up. But because we're either too scared to take the risk or we're just not familiar enough with it, we feel intimidated to go out there, expose ourselves, learn about it, we've just decided to sit out of it. But by sitting away from it, we're also, you know, avoiding the growth that we could have experienced if we were engaging in the stock market. So again, I'm urging all of us to not just save money, not just save what you have left over when you pay your bills every month, but to be intentional about saying, okay, this month, this is what we make as a household, right? This is how much we want to be able to save monthly. Therefore, this is how much we are going to spend on our bills, and then create a lifestyle that reflects that. And then don't just save the money, save up that money to the point where you have an emergency fund, you have an amount of money that can bail you out of any trouble that your family might encounter, and then invest the rest of it, right? Invest the rest of the money in real estate is something that some of us are more comfortable with, but the stock market is really an avenue for you to passively grow your wealth. As we go through in this channel, I'm going to talk again in more detail about budgeting, about living beneath your means, and ultimately about how to invest in the stock market and, you know, some of the things that we've learned as we've gone along. But all together today, I was just going to urge y'all to start out by making a budget. Again, I'm very happy to give input where it's needed. Drop a comment or send me a message, and you know, I'm happy to engage. Live beneath your means. I have suggestions about ways to reduce your costs of living if anybody is interested, based on things that I've done, based on things that I've read about other people doing. And then ultimately, finally, also finding ways to save money and to invest the money that we save. If you need a push, you need some encouragement, very happy again to create a community of people that are going to be maximizing their savings and trying to let the money grow. In the future, we're going to talk about ways in which, you know, how much you're losing out if you just have your money sitting in your bank account versus if you're investing it, and how it would have grown if you were investing it. Take, for example, just now, right quick before I go, if you had $10,000 in 2008 and you invested it in a simple index fund, for example, something called the S&P 500, which is really just a group of stocks of the top 500 companies in the United States. Let's say you bought an index fund that had all these stocks in it in 2008 with $10,000. Now, 12 years later, this is how much you would have, right? Versus if you just kept that money sitting in a bank account, 12 years later, you would still have that $10,000. Now, if we were to project this over 30 years, this is how much you would have compared to, again, $10,000 that would have just sat in a bank account for 30 years. So again, we need to be taking advantage of these tools that are out there, of the system that is in place for people to grow their wealth, and really maximizing it to our benefit. Now, for some of us, we're not so interested in saving large amounts of money just for retirement because we've convinced ourselves that we won't need as much. But even if that's you, I know that there are other things that, you know, you care about that you might want to save money for, or that you might want to grow your wealth for. Whatever the reasons are, whatever your goals are, whatever your lifestyle is, challenging us to be more intentional about investing the money that we have, you know, educating ourselves to the tools that are out there and figuring out what works best for us on a personal level so that we can continue to increase and improve in our personal finance and ultimately improve our community. Again, if you know anyone who might be interested in this or who might benefit from any of this, please definitely share this with them. Please subscribe so that you can see our next video. Looking forward again to continuing to do this with all of you, and thank you for tuning in.